I want to say that for me, the part about the unsayable that is behind everything, that's been the theme of the past couple of weeks, and the power of religion, which is minimally a community organized around myths and symbols that are expressing an unsayable reality that can only be said in symbolic ways. And one thing that a religion does is it creates a community that shares those myths and those symbols. And the main thing, as we learned from my candles in there, as we learned from Rudolf Bultmann, is not to reify myths and symbols into statements of fact, which is one thing that leads to this, religion science dichotomy, which for me is something of a false dichotomy.
The finger in the moon.
What's that? Yes, yes, thank you, Abigail. You want to go ahead and recite that Buddhist saying?
I don't remember exactly what it is, but I think it's something like when you're pointing at the moon, don't confuse your finger in the
Yeah,
moon.
when you're pointing at the moon, don't confuse your finger with the moon. And so language points at the moon, but then people reify language that the finger is the moon. That's one of my favorite sayings forever. I've invited a few people uh, to comment tonight. I see that Willie is here. I'm going to ask Willie to say a few words. Helena, if Carol Zolman can join us, that would be great as well. Uh, David, you mentioned something that we're all feeling. And this is really a nature of community. If you look at the entire geographical area of Los Angeles, a tiny part has been affected. However, part of the nature of social trauma is why we identify with other members of our community. And this is a very positive thing. So even when only a small community, part of the community suffers, symbolically it stands for all of us. And although, the vast majority of people in Los Angeles have not suffered devastation, there's a common spiritual devastation. I wanted to share with you, I did a little bit of research this week. Israel north of Beersheba, which means Beersheba North, not including the mostly empty Negev desert, has the same geographical area as Los Angeles County. Something important to remember whenever you discuss Israel. Populated Israel is about the size of Los Angeles County. The population of Israel is almost identical with the population of Los Angeles County. And in the constant Hezbollah terror bombings of the north, about the same number of structures have been destroyed in a year as were destroyed in the fires this past few weeks or week or so. I mean, about 10,000 structures were destroyed. Israel has a larger inner refugee of people evacuated. Up to 60 to 80,000 Israelis have left the north and are very tentative about going back. However, it's a small number of buildings relative to the total number of buildings in Israel, but the trauma is shared. Last thing I want to say is last summer, when Iran was getting ready to attack, and the newspapers were saying, it's coming, it's coming, coming, and then we all got a alert, it's coming tonight. And we know what their arsenal was. We know they had hundreds and hundreds of ballistic missiles, if not thousands, and they were mostly aimed toward Tel Aviv. And I went out on our porch that night and I did a little filming because we honestly didn't know if the cityscape would be there in the morning. And we all looking at each other. I mean, going down the street, looking at each other, not saying anything, but we had the same thoughts. You might not be here tomorrow. I might not be here tomorrow. This city might not be here tomorrow. We didn't know if Israel could fend off hundreds and hundreds of ballistic missiles. Now we lived through it. Um, but even that anticipation, I think, had a traumatic effect. I mean, I still carry that moment. I'll probably carry the rest of my life. So the social trauma, even if your home wasn't destroyed, the social trauma, I think, is deep, and it'll take a long time for that to go away. All right, so with those few words, I want to go over to Willie. I've asked Willie, A, because we love Willie, and Willie has been giving ongoing commentary on Facebook that I think has been, I don't know if you meant to do this, Willie, but a kind of really vivid um, reporting and commentary that's really helped us over here feel what's happening there. So I've asked Willie just to share a few words of what it's been like for you to witness all of this.
Well, first of all, thank you for that, Rabbi. The Palisades fire hits particularly close home to me because my kids go to school at Palisades High, and the initial fear was that the entire school was obliterated. That was the fear. As some of the media debris has kind of like melted away and more accurate reporting starting to come through. It turns out that 30% of the school was burnt. So now it's not completely obliterated. So from that personal standpoint, it's a bit of a relief. But the four friends of mine, two kept their homes and two lost their homes. And so, and then also two other friends in the Altadena fires lost their homes too, two families. One is both musicians, and they had really worked really hard to gather the funds to purchase this home. And it really was their dream home, and it's now up in flames. So this just particularly, hits home just on trying to imagine what it must be like to have worked so hard for something and to literally watch it go up in flames.
Yeah.
So I'm
How
just
are your
trying to.
children, how are your children experiencing this, Willie? Is Izzy and Lizzie?
Izzy and Eli, they're
Izzy and
dealing
Eli,
with
sorry.
they're dealing with it in different ways. My daughter being the more extroverted one, I think she talked to Meirav. I think that was one method for her to kind of cope, and just to be kind of with her friends, all of whom go to Pali, and they all are sort of commiserating together. Um, and my son was invited to go on a skiing trip this weekend with his best friend since kindergarten. So they're all kind of dealing with it as best as they can. The thing that's remarkable to me is the level of community that just has erupted. As soon as these horrible fires kind of consumed the Palisades community. Um, I'm part of a parent chat group, a WhatsApp chat group on my phone, and the amount of sacrifice and the amount of donations and help, to help people who've lost homes, of which are considerable, is very touching, just on a human level. Um, the other piece I should also say is that my late wife Giovanna, of whom everybody knew here, she grew up in the Palisades,
Mm.
and she grew up on what they call the alphabet streets. So in the Palisades, there's a little section where the streets are successive by alphabet. So A Street, B Street, C. She grew up on Fisk and on Galloway, and all of the ABC Street homes, virtually all of them, have gone up in
Mm.
flames.
Mm. Yeah.
So it just hits me on a myriad of levels. This whole tragedy.
I want to mention something that Belinda, your partner, shared. That's something I've shared every year, but she says so eloquently. This is not the time to look for why and failures of
Right.
government policies. Well, houses are smoldering and people are traumatized. Already, people are jumping in and making political use of this. And she said it
Yes.
very articulately. And I've said
Well,
this so
yeah.
many times.
I'm
The
glad you
day
acknowledged
after the trauma, before people are buried, before anything happens, people decide that they're going to make political use. And I want to thank Belinda for posting that.
I'll let her
Um,
know. She's
yeah, that
entertaining her cousin who's in from Israel.
yeah,
So we just concluded Shabbat
yeah,
services, but
yeah,
thank you for that.
yeah.
I mean, that is exactly right. The human impulse, we have different choices. On the one hand, we can either assign blame like right away, like some people are doing, or we can sort of take a beat and just kind of um, be awed by the
Mhm.
level of community
Yeah.
that's out there. And really, it is a choice to either start kind of pointing fingers, and I understand the sense of injustice that some people feel, But one thing that I've learned over the years not to do, and part of it is through your teachings, Rabbi, is to not be an injustice collector.
Mhm.
And I think that there are a lot of people that kind of live in deficit and live in sort of a narrative that they've built for themselves that their lives are a series of deficits. And that's how they frame the way they look at the world. And I just think it's an internally as well as externally destructive way to live.
Yeah.
And so what I'm trying to do is just focus on community building. And community is a really big part of the part of the musical community in Los Angeles, of which I'm an active member. And that part has been very galvanizing and very inspiring.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much, Willie, for sure. I'm so glad you could join us tonight. I know you had other things to
So
do, but I really wanted you to be here.
thank you, Rabbi.
Helena Berry, who's a clinical psychologist with a thriving practice, and um, she's wonderful in all ways. But she started with Viktor Frankl, who's in our pantheon of gods of psychology at Oratora. So Yosh, if you could spotlight Helena. Helena, I hope you have a few words from your perspective to share with us.
Well, whenever there's this kind of trauma that goes on, I think a lot of us feel helpless. And so much of the blame game comes from trying to figure out how to feel less helpless.
Right.
And I know that at first I was in shock just seeing the devastation. It reminded me of war. And of course, it triggered my memories of what my parents went through and what people went through on October 7th. And it's so painful. And then I think back to everything that we've learned over the years at Oratora, which is the human condition is such that we are going to face a lot of these traumas as we grow and go to the ends of our lives.
Mhm.
So the most we can do is on some level be there for one another and try not to tell people it was all for the best, because it never really is.
Mhm.
All the cliches have to be gone. I think we have to just be there for one another. And I've had some people who've lost their homes, and it's astounding. It's
Yeah.
astounding.
Yeah. In the rabbi community of rabbis, the large synagogue in Palisades, Kilat, Israel was not destroyed, but I just read, I don't know if it's true, that all three of their rabbis had their homes destroyed.
Wow.
Um, so just even in the small thing called the Board of Rabbis of Los Angeles, and we all know them. I mean, I don't live there anymore, but I certainly remember and know my colleagues, and how devastating is that to feel? And again, I want to remind you, even if devastation only attacks a small part of a community, the 1,000 people, 1,200 people that were massacred and butchered on October 7th, is a tiny part of the country of 9 million people, but it's a shared trauma. Another thing I want to share with you, as Israelis are watching the news, and they are riveted to the news what's happening in Los Angeles.
I know.
um, the landscape looks like the Gaza envelope area. You know, several um, small towns and kibbutzim and moshavim look like the Palisades, and it was as it were, people were almost re-traumatized by watching this kind of
Yes.
scenes. And Israelis feel a very, very deep connection the United States, and so there's almost as if our cousins uh, were, um, were hurt by this. And then one last person. I don't know if you're here, Carol. If you are, I know she also had other things she had to do tonight. If you could raise your hand if you're here, and if not, I'll go to a question. Hold on a second. Let me.
Yeah. Hi, Rabbi. It's Eric.
Oh, hey, Eric.
Hi, Carol could not be with us tonight, and I understood that she said she was going to let you know. So
Yes, yeah, and she
I'm
did,
sorry
but
for
I saw
that.
your name, so I
Yeah,
thought maybe
I'm
she's
here.
sitting next to you. Okay. Anyway,
Sorry.
no, and Carol's voice is always so welcome at these things, and so I'm sad to say there will be other times. All
Yeah,
right,
thank you.
so
I'll let her know. Thank you.
okay, all right, so Yosh, you can unspotlight me, and I'll take a few questions and comments. I see Rick, Lydia have a hand up, and so you can please make your comment. Helena, I want to thank you. And Willie, I want to thank you for being willing to be here tonight and offer us some spiritual leadership. Yes,
Hi,
Rick or Lydia.
Rabbi.
Hi.
You've said several times that this is just a small part of Los Angeles. I want to tell you, it doesn't feel like this is a small part of Los Angeles. There are
Right.
5 fires going on right now,
Yeah.
and they are spreading. They are under very little control, and everyone that I know is concerned, and
Yeah.
everyone is upset, and everyone is involved. So it is not all of Los Angeles is united together and concerned about this. It's the worst fire in the history of Los Angeles. It is horrible.
Yeah.
Really.
Yes, that is the nature of social trauma. I saw one person post on Facebook, only, 1.9% of Los Angeles has been affected by the fires. And I looked at it and I thought to myself, this person is, I'll say it to you, so clueless about the nature of social trauma. Um, we who live in the West Los Angeles area, let's say from the 405 over and, kind of between the 10, the 405, the one, we know people in the Palisades and we know people in Pasadena, Altadena, and where the other fires are. So we feel it intensely. So even though you could say geographically the map is small, spiritually, emotionally, it affects every single person in the area. And I'm going to probably speak for people outside of Los Angeles who are looking at that. And it's not just there, but for the grace of God go I. There is some of that, but most of it is true, honest concern for traumatized people and, outpouring of love and care. Um, so
If I
you're exactly right. It's a socially experienced trauma, and even from over here, May Rob and I are looking at the news just devastated, and I have people calling me and say, "How's your home?" Say, "We know you don't live in it anymore, but we lived there for 20 years." They said, "How's your house?" And even just this connection to our beautiful home we had in Sherman Oaks. We made sure to. Someone drove by and said, "Your house is okay." Just so you know, so it's not our house anymore, but definitely in some kind of nostalgic sense, it's our house. Anyway, thank you for affirming that thought. Let's say Tamara and then Ruth. Tamara, you want to share something?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Helena and David, and such beautiful singing that just touched my heart tonight, Avi. And thank you, Rabbi, for doing this. Well, I just was touched by how, I've been so close with the Jewish and Israeli communities this year and how the re-traumatization has come up, where I'd be talking to my friends in Israel and I've never been, and I never know what it's like to be traumatized in the way they are. And I was realizing as David and Rabbi and all of you were talking, how this area is connected because I've watched the fire go from the 118, jump the 101 to the beach in one night. And so all of my family is in the valley from the 118 to the beach, everyone I love. And so that re-traumatization of we've all been like where John and I were married, was burned down. And just all of the memories, that we all have. But just that re-traumatization of all going through this together over and over again.
Yes.
And I guess I hadn't really thought of it being like a bomb, but now I keep seeing that image today, and it is kind of even re-traumatizing me of October 7th. And just recently I feel like I got out of the tunnels, and I wasn't in the tunnels every morning. But this is okay because this is a force of nature, and somehow, even though it's devastating and we'll figure it out, and it's not humans killing humans, and so I loved what Willie said about community, and I'm so grateful to be a part of this community. And I've seen so many houses burned down, being born and raised in California my whole life, and half of the houses that burn down up north in those fires we have every year are from arsonists. So it's also a mental health trauma that we need to work on, So anyway, I just thank you so much, and I love you all.
Thank you, Tamara. As I'm looking, I see Deirdre lives in Santa Barbara. And I think the terrible Santa Barbara fires and the mudslide, and I mean, just the devastation. And people think they live secure lives, and the next morning everything's gone. Deirdre, I didn't prepare you for this question, but living up in Santa
Oh,
Barbara,
that's
is there
okay.
anything that you're feeling up
Yeah,
there?
thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody. Um, Definitely the fire is re-traumatizing. Um, you don't really realize it's re-traumatizing except that things happen like, I don't know what day it is. I don't know
Mhm,
what year it is. I don't know what time
mhm,
it is. You kind of go into this surreal state of mind
mhm,
where you're
mhm.
ungrounded. You realize, oh, right, this is a replay of the shock.
Mhm, mhm.
And also the shock of living in a war zone of utter catastrophe
Yeah,
for over a year. I mean, it takes
yeah,
years to clean up.
mhm,
Um,
yeah.
I love what you're doing because one thing that's been on my mind and heart was how to help was story. That story heals. When we get to tell our story to and someone hears us,
Mhm,
we heal. So
mhm,
I'm organizing a group of people from here to go down and work once it's okay to go there, just to listen to people's stories
mhm,
and like a 12-step program.
mhm,
It works because somebody's talking about recovery that had, I was an alcoholic. Whereas
mhm,
you talk to somebody who's not an alcoholic, you're like, they don't get it.
mhm,
But so when you can go and say, oh, I lived through this, I lost 27 neighbors, I lost my house, we made it through. We're here to
mhm,
help you make it through and just
mhm,
hear
mhm.
their story.
Yeah.
I think that's as important as all the other
Mhm.
necessities that we're giving. Um,
You're 100% right.
important.
About a month ago, I was a scholar in residence up in Jerusalem for
Mhm.
an organization bringing people over to work in the South. And the guy working in the kitchen came out and sat with us at Shabbos dinner, and he just shared. He said, "I'm a refugee from the north. My home in Kiryat Shmona was destroyed. The town of Metula up in the north is 60% destroyed. Um, and and I think you're right. The fact that he could sit there and tell his story to us was, and we were truly concerned. He could feel that. That's a really good point. Um, when people are traumatized, they very much want a witness. They want a
That's
healing,
exactly right.
compassionate person who will absorb their pain. That's something, Willie, something about your community.
Yeah.
Uh, it seems like it's happening organically, but that's actually a thought to share of some way for those affected to know that there are people who want
Want to
to,
hear their
to
story,
want to hear their
really
stories.
want to
Right.
sit down and really listen deeply and see their soul. And when we do that, it's remarkable how people are healed and their
Mhm.
strength comes back.
Yeah.
Because when
Yeah.
you're in this much shock, you just go into paralysis
Mhm.
and you need other people to just help you keep your feet moving.
Right.
At least
Thank you.
that's been my experience. So, well, thank
Thank you
you
so
for
much.
asking me. Thank you.
Uh, Helena, you had part of your coastline fall into the ocean not too long ago, and I know you weren't right next to it, but you were close enough.
Yeah, just a block away from the cliffs. And I think about that. Sometimes it's very loud. And I think, okay, so are we going to end up with an ocean view or are we going to end up in the water?
Right.
So you
Right.
just have to have a
Yeah.
little bit of understanding of we don't get to choose and we don't know what's going
Yeah.
to happen, but we just have to have one another.
Yeah.
And that's what,
We had a terrible lightning and thunderstorm in Tel Aviv last night. Abigail, did you have it up in Herzliya?
I'm pretty sure we're gonna have like some scar on the campus from the lightning because all of the buildings shook and it looked like the lightning was gonna come in my window.
Yeah. Yeah. Our building shook. There's a the sky turned a brilliant white, huge thunder, and our building shook. And of course, me, Rob, and I thought we're under attack. And when
yeah.
the building shook, we thought a missile landed
Everybody
two houses
wrote in the
away.
group chats of the dorms, group chats, because I live in the dorms. All right, well, I guess it's either gonna be the Houthis or the lightning. Just take your pick.
Right. Anyway, so I mean, me, Rob, are we under attack? Where's the siren? And then we were looking on our phones because you get these alerts, critical alert. You have 10 seconds to get you to your reinforced room, and we looked in the sky, but boy, it was like a combat zone. When a car has backfire, all the veterans, jump on their faces. Anyway, so it just reminds us here, anytime there's a light in the sky or a loud boom, we think it's a ballistic missile here.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm smiling because I'm looking at myself last night, and I went back to that night of the Iranian attack, and I thought, well, okay, here it is, and thank God it wasn't. And all right, I'll take a few questions, and I might have time to share a teaching tonight. I see Ruth with your hand up, and then I see Steve Pullman and a couple of other people. So, Ruth, you have a brief question or comment for us?
Ruth, we can't hear you.
Might just be volume because you're not muted. Or not. I'll go to Steve Pullman while you work on that. Steve, you have your hand up? You want to share something?
Yes, Rabbi. Very good to see you this evening. I think the most unsettling thing for me was the false warning evacuations that I've received here in LA. I just signed on. I don't know if people have mentioned it to you.
Yes, it was reported here in Israel.
Oh, yeah. It has happened 3 times already. And it's just unsettling when we're already in this nervous mode, and then have these false, it's like, crying fire in the theater, when there's no fire.
Right. Yeah.
So, it has been unsettling. Can you say any words to kind of calm us down here in LA?
Sure. I think so, because, when missiles are coming at Israel, we all get an alert on our phone. The missiles are generally headed toward the north, the central, I'll say the north, the middle part where Abigail lives in Herzliya, or Tel Aviv, which is, kind of the southern part of the populated zone. And there's a time there when we were getting these phone alerts says critical alert. You have a minute to get to your shelter. Now, we got those a few times a day. And then for a while, when the Houthis were fiery, we got them every single night. And, they were a false alarm in the sense that they got intercepted, or they didn't hit Tel Aviv. One hit Ramat Gan and destroyed a school that was, fortunately, it was not school hours. And all I want to say is I'd rather have an overactive defense alert system than a less active defense alert system. And that's what I want to say to you. If somebody falsely alerted you, know that the alert system is actually working. And I would rather they make a mistake on alerting and there be nothing than not alerting and there be something. So that's how we think about it here. So I hope you're forgiving of your city officials if there was a mistake. But they want to protect the citizens. And if they made a mistake, I think we should be speaking as an Angelino from afar. Let's be forgiving of people who are also traumatized by probably their sense that they have not been able to protect their citizens. So maybe they're in high gear about protecting their citizens.
Can I say something?
Yes, of course, Abigail. Then David, I'll let you have the last comment. Then I think I have room for a little bit of teaching tonight that I think will be apropos. David?
Steve, it sounds like, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Abigail, then David. Yeah.
It sounds like what you're saying. It reminds me not just of the missile attacks that we've had, but there was a period of time where there was a specific threat that they were going to directly hit any sort of electric center and also water supplies. That was a big thing that we had for a couple of weeks at a time. And it was very, very stressful to feel like we want to have a reaction to, oh my gosh, everything is falling and crashing and burning, but wait, my house is still here. So how do you balance that idea of I'm gonna have a go bag and I'll be ready to go if I need to, and my house might completely burn down, but also that hasn't happened yet. It's a very difficult thing to balance of living the day to day when you're not sure if everything is gonna fall and crumble. So I really understand that. And I think that the best way to deal with that, which is what we did here, is to be as prepared as possible. So have your go bag, have all of the spare water, the canned food, whatever it is that you can do, so that the moment you realize, oh, this is
Yeah.
real, you are prepared to go.
Yeah, yeah. And passports and essential papers in a fireproof safe, and then being able to get to that safe and get out within a minute. So you got to know where everything is, and know that if it comes, where you're going to go. I mean, what you're going to take and where you're going to go. Talk about that. Um, we actually drilled those kind of things in our home. Uh, you know, fire alert and home invasions, because there was a time when there were a lot of home invasions, and we would drill in the house. You know, we got the girls a ladder that went up to their bedroom, the ladder you can fold up and how to put out the bedroom. So the more prepared you are, I think the less maybe less traumatized, and if God forbid it does happen, we know what we're going to do. And David, you have the last comment here
Yeah,
before I give teaching, and then we have some more comments at the end.
thanks. I almost wasn't going to share this because it sounds a little bit like a criticism, but I think there might be something valuable in it, which is Arlene and I were watching the news last night, and they had cameras out in the Palisades, and there was a man standing in front of his completely decimated house, and right next door to him was a house that was untouched, totally standing, no damage at all. And the journalist asked him, well, what do you make of that? Why do you think that is? How do you make sense of that? And he said, well, I guess God spared their house. And I thought, he's standing in front of his own home that was burned down, feeling like maybe, God failed him in some way. And we were so disturbed by that. I just wanted to share it in case anyone's thinking in that way.
Well, I was actually segue what I want to teach tonight, because this is a really big part of, I think, how religion can support and also fails people. By the way, we have a synagogue member who sent me a picture, a person in the Palisades. He sent me a picture of his house that survived, and every other house on his street was burnt down. And he said, Rabbi Finley, I don't understand this. So he and his wife were they don't know what to make of this. That it's as if the angel of death passed over their house. So let me share a few words about it. Ruth. I'll get to you at the end. I want to go ahead and offer a little teaching here. Let me go ahead and I have messages on my screen that I need to get rid of.
So popular.
The system is sending me. All right, doesn't matter. Okay, so first let's take that. Look at this theology that God is in control, and everything is the will and the hand and the finger of God. And what happens when people are afflicted, when people have disease, when people have pain? So there's a sense that God is doing this to me, and which is one reason why I so emphatically teach not an only Lurianic Kabbalistic idea, but well embedded in Lurianic Kabbalah, that we live in a world of shvira, a world of brokenness, and the divine will for the good cannot get through the broken, what are called the kelim, the disrupted lenses by which the divine will comes to our level. And so there, you might call that nature. We live in certainly nature, earthquakes, fires, tsunamis, and so forth. This is not the will of God from a Lurianic level, and not even evil is the will of God. And evil is not there to teach us things. And sometimes when people say to me, well, this is there to teach me, I said, you can learn from it. It doesn't mean it's there to teach you. I've run into this over and over again, that evil, destruction is the teacher. And I say, actually, I think God is your teacher. Your soul is your teacher. Evil is not your teacher. So I just want to say to all of us, if you still tend to run on that mode, it's here to teach you. There's a reason for everything. I wrote this in my my email. When a person says to me, well, there's a reason for everything, and I would say, well, what was the reasoning behind this? And I'm going to go exactly what Helena said. People say these things to give them a sense of control, that there's someone in control. So when I offer this Lurianic Kabbalistic idea that the divine will is impeded, and it might just be the awful fact of randomness, or maybe even, I think, when human evil is involved, maybe even the Sitra Achra. So I remember I have these archetypal experiences as a rabbi where many, God, maybe I'm going to say back in the 80s, a person had throat cancer, and they had studied some kind of Course in Miracles kind of theology where the person said, I think I have throat cancer because I didn't speak up enough. And I took a deep breath. I'd never heard of anything like this. I said, I don't understand what you're saying. He says, well, you kind of absorb life lessons in your body. So when I said I have bad shoulders, Rabbi Finley, you're shouldering too much. I said, actually, no, a guy in jujitsu was out of control and he hurt me. So this idea that you ascribe everything to a reason, to everything to some hidden will, and God has a plan. When I studied Lurianic Kabbalah, and I realized there is no plan, there is no reason. Things don't happen because there's a teacher. We just live in a world that is characterized by the randomness of destruction and evil. I think that to be true. Therefore, the teaching is, what do I do in the face of this randomness and evil? And so turn the attention back on, I'll exert control in my life with the idea that I have control over how I feel and I have control of how I think. So that's, I think, a kind of a theology that I would just like to dismantle completely. I mean, I really don't want people to think that way. And the theology of Lurianic Kabbalah as an alternative theology really helps me. I mean, since I've been here, I've had Israelis say, well, you're a rabbi. How do you make sense of October 7th? Because no one's talking about it. And I've had more than one occasion where I say to a person, do you have 10 minutes? I'd like to I actually had this conversation Thursday night. A young, a brilliant Orthodox guy, but the kippah suga, the knitted kippah, has a master's in philosophy from Tel Aviv University. He's a really deep guy. And he said, we've never been able to talk about it. And I said, have you heard of Lurianic Kabbalah? He says, I heard about it. I don't know anything about it. I said, can I give you 10 minutes? And when I shared it with him, he was in tears. He said, we all need to know this. You need to tell everybody that evil does not mean there is no God or that God has punished us for something. I said, I know it's part of standard traditional Orthodox thought. It's in the prayer book. But you have to somehow extirpate that. And so the teaching that I've been sharing my entire professional life, that I've shared with you, that I share with people who are suffering, that I'm sharing here and sharing here now. There's no reason. There's no meaning. It's not your teacher. God is the teacher, and we are our teachers. If you don't think God is your teacher, your soul is your teacher, and and we have the ability to face trauma. I'm going to take this a further step. If we're conscious when we die, we have a control over how we die. I've seen people die in a bitter way and feel punished, and on the other hand, there are teachings in our tradition that tell us every day you should prepare for your death. And so when the moment comes and the moment is closer, you know exactly what you're going to do. I mean, Rabbi Yehud HaNasi, when his students asked him, bottom line, how do we deal with our sinfulness? He would say, imagine your life from your grave and look back on your life and prepare to die every day. And they said, but we don't know when we're going to die. He said, that's exactly right. If you're considering doing something you might not feel right, how will you feel when you look back on your life, the moment of your death, whether you should have done that or not? So examine your life from your death, which does two things. It puts everything in perspective, all the things that we're attached to and all the emotions and angers and so forth that we're attached to, and say, well, look at it from your casket, and also look at yourself. That's where we're headed. And boy, does that put things in perspective. And it's when I share it, people say, Rabbi Finley, that's so morbid. I says, so don't use it. I'm just saying I use it because it actually lightens me. When I consider things in the face of my death, the world becomes lighter. I mean, the things that I'm worried about just don't matter. And what I want is the things that I'm going to carry with me to the next world, are the things that matter. Love, moments of transcendence, your faces. It's we have to orient ourselves to the deepest moments in our lives. So I do have a brief teaching. I'll try to compress it. Maybe Abigail, you and I can discuss this next week. You don't know this, but behind the scenes, there's rumblings in the world of Reformed Jewish organized thought. It began with the examination of how many Reformed Jews attend Chabad. They go to Chabad Passover Seders, they go to Chabad Torah studies, and they're asking, we're the modern ones, we're the intellectuals. Why are we losing people? Why do our college students go to the Chabad Passover Seder and not the Hillel Passover Seder? And I believe I have an answer. And it speaks to both a terrible deficiency in Reform Judaism, which I think can be addressed, and also something positive about Chabad. Chabad, remember, is deeply rooted in Lurianic Kabbalah. It's Hasidic system that's rooted in Lurianic Kabbalah. And when a Chabad rabbi, let's say, looks at you, if you're Jewish, and people say, well, they don't look at all people equal. Okay, so hold that against them. Now let that go. When they look at you, that if you're a woman, it's as if your mind, heart, soul, hands, and eyes on Friday night are only fully realized if you light candles. You are an unfinished human being if you don't light candles. They look at a man. If tefillin is not on your arm is aching for tefillin. If tefillin is not on your head, your mind is looking for something to contain it and encompass it. So they see a Jewish person as has a soul that's aching to be fulfilled with mitzvot. Now, that's their mission. Their mission, and by the way, so what happens when we fulfill mitzvot consciously? By both the ritual, moral, and psychological, from their perspective. We break a husk, we release a spark, and it heals the divine. So when they look at you, they're not looking, oh, we need more attendance. They see you as composed of, that you're filled with klipot that are covering sparks that want to be released. And so they say to you, they won't say this, but I would like to help you break husks and release sparks. So instead they say, put on tefillin or light your Friday night candles. So try to imagine if when you went around and you saw people's souls and you thought, I have something that I could share with you that would break the husks inside of you, release a spark, bring relief to your soul, and heal God. Would you share that with them? Well, they say, well, got to be careful about it. And they also know in Chabad, if duat Adonai b'simcha, serve God with joy, that even melancholy, this is a very profound Hasidic teaching, melancholy is the force of the Yetzer Hara, it is a klipa. So just the idea of living in personal darkness is the klipa. I remember when I learned this as a young person, it really, really shaped my life when they, because I've always suffered from episodic depression, and they said, it's a klipa. It's not about your mother or your father or anything else. The klipa, the evil, is attaching itself to your soul, and you have an obligation to break out. And this idea that I have an obligation to break out of the husk of inner darkness and break into light, it changed the way I thought about myself. That this is the human condition, and I have, as it were, a mitzvah. So then I thought about Reform Judaism. And I thought to myself, and I'm going to say our, because I'm a Reform ordained rabbi, what is our sancta? I mean, it's not Lurianic Kabbalah. It's not this idea that we're composed of sparks encased in husks, yearning to be released. And I'm sad to say that the Reform sancta has turned into social action. And it's certainly something to do. However, the sancta, which means the inner sanctum of Reformed Judaism, is built on a narrative of oppressors and victims. And since Reformed Jews don't feel particularly victimized, they look for other victims. And as it were, their sense of self is when they are saving victims, which in a way addresses the irony that so many Reformed rabbis are mourning on those campus demonstrations, people sitting on lawns and saying, free Palestine, destroy Israel, Many of them were the best and brightest of the Reformed Jewish movement. And the kids would come home from college and talk about DEI and evil Israel. And the rabbis and parents were saying, where did we go wrong? Well, one reason they went wrong is in the Reformed sancta, they're always on the lookout for the new victim. Now, Reformed Judaism teaches about ethical stands, but I guarantee you, they're not taught how to morally reason. So think about this. The inner sanctum is social ethics, but they're never taught to think about ethics. They're only giving it a solution to ethics, and the solution is always the victim de jour. So I would say to myself, ethics cannot be at the core of our inner sanctum. It should be one of them, but not the core of our inner sanctum. And if you're going to be taught ethics, taught how to reason about ethics, not the solution. So when they ask what's wrong, I think I can say that people need to be taught about how to morally reason. Then the answer to a moral question, it's better to teach a kid math than just give them the answer, right? So they're not giving them a way to reason morally. The second thing I want to say, so I've thought about it this week. So what ought to be at the inner sanctum of Reformed Judaism? It can't be halacha, it can't be the mitzvot, because Reformed Judaism is self-understood as not being obligated by the ritual commandment, to some degree obligated by moral commandments, which has all been funneled to social action. So character has not been taught. So I will venture to guess, if you go to your local Reform synagogue, you will not hear an insistent message about character. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I know it's not something that is discussed. So there's moral action channeled into social action, channeled into save the victim, as opposed to learning to reason toward moral answers, number two, and to work on character, which is part of moral study. So I want to expand that in my opinion, the sanctum of Reformed Judaism should not only be the moral dimension, but also, not surprisingly, the spiritual dimension, the soul. So to put all of this together, in my opinion, religion practiced best would be a movement toward some kind of human fulfillment. We have the word osher in Judaism, and it's all over the Bible that God is interested in our osher. In fact, we have a phrase, ashrei yoshvei beitecha. Ashrei comes from the word osher with an aleph, which means spiritual fulfillment, spiritual contentedness. Those who dwell in the house of God have spiritual contentedness. Well, we don't go to the temple. We build a house of God around us. And now, how do you know when you're in the house of God? You have achieved some kind of inner spiritual contentedness. So then the question becomes, how do I build a house of God? Well, part of it is going to be a spiritual experience of spiritual contentedness. So I phrased it as osher, spiritual contentedness, also the good, meaning the infinite good, not a good thing or a good deed, but rather the infinite good as an expression of the divine. There's a phrase in Deuteronomy that says, God says, I've given you this mitzvot latov lach. It's not excellent Hebrew grammar, but the idea of so that the good will come to you, but again, not a good, the good. So I'm thinking that what should be our sanctum, that some great part of our lives is devoted to achieving the good, achieving osher, spiritual contentedness, Greek is eudaimonia, within a moral framework. To put it just in one sentence, strive toward osher and tov, strive toward eudaimonia and the good within a moral framework. If I take a step back, what does that mean? We have to work on the realm of the soul. That if you are not working on the realm of the soul, you're not going to find spiritual contentedness, and you actually might not be able to find the good in the deepest sense. So then my question comes for my Reform colleagues, how much do we teach about, number one, the skills of achieving the good, contemplating the good, understanding the good, talking about the good, including the moral good, not just an answer, but what it means to work through it at the level of mind and soul within a moral framework, and how to achieve eudaimonia, how to achieve osher and sustain that. Now, I have to share with you, when I look at all of the communications that I receive from the Reform movement, again, this is going to sound a little bit mean, but it's true. Most of it is about one anniversary or another of women rabbis. It's been 50 years since the first rabbi did this. It's been 20 years since the first women rabbi. We have another book on women's Torah study. And I think to myself, well, I'm glad there's been a rectification of the marginalization of women in Jewish religious life. We've been on it for a long time. But I thought to myself, but there's very little about um, any strong, insistent guidance on character, spiritual fulfillment, and then living in this world of husks, dealing with grief, pain, loss, sorrow, and returning ourselves to some kind of wholeness is absent. So if I were in charge, I would say, um, again, because I think we did it right for a while. A reformed synagogue should be a center of wisdom, since it's not halakhic. You're not going to go there and fulfill mitzvot. Therefore, what should it be? A center for wisdom that will help people strive toward the right, the good, the true spiritual fulfillment within a moral framework, with the teachings on character, the purification of thought, how to reason well, and how to find spiritual experience. Now, I'm going to put that aside. Last thought. So, what do we do with theology? I'm back on my theme for the past few weeks is to demythologize mythology. So, I want to give you a sense of the mythology of the Messiah. So people critique Chabad because, well, they're messianic. They believe that the Rebbe was the Messiah, the way of the Messiah. They said, what do you think, Rabbi? And they said, do you believe in the Messiah? I say, well, let me tell you how much I believe in the Messiah. And I just had an experience this week. So Rob and I go to a local Israeli version of the YMCA to work out. And there's a little plaza. And I was sitting outside of a cup of coffee, and mentally ill homeless person walks by. He's unkempt, he's not washed, and he comes up to me and asks me if I have a cigarette. I said I don't. So he's looking for cigarette butts. Now here's what I remembered. I remembered a saying that I learned as a kid, 17 years old in Long Beach. Treat every person as if they are the Messiah, waiting for an act of chesed to reveal themselves. If you do it, and they are, you save the world. And if they're not the Messiah, what have you lost? I was 17 years old. I was blown away. I couldn't believe something so beautiful was written. And I took it into my soul. So I looked at him, a smelly guy looking for cigarette butts, and I thought, well, what if he's the Messiah? What if he's the Messiah? I don't think I've ever bought a pack of cigarettes. So I went into the local mini market and I said, I need a pack of cigarettes. She says, what kind? I said, well, what kind are there? It's not for me. I said, what's the most popular? She said, Marlboro Light. I said, give me a pack of Marlboro Lights. I got a lighter and I put it in a little bag, and he's looking around, and I gave him the lighter and the cigarettes. He looked at me like, seriously? And I said, yeah, here, it's for you. And so every week I buy him a pack of Marlboros and now I'm going to ask him what he likes to eat. I want to overwhelm him, but I'd like to give him a chocolate protein drink if he wants it. So people say, do I believe in the Messiah? I believe in the Messiah to the extent that our world is populated with hidden messiahs looking for an act of chesed to reveal themselves. If you provide that act of chesed, you've saved the world. If not, what have you lost? Now, so I've taken a belief that I don't actually believe in the Messiah, but I believe in the Messiah just enough to propel me toward an act of chesed. So last thing is, every belief in our sancta should drive you toward either personal transformation or an action. So I talk a lot about how beautiful things are at the symbolic level, but then we have the transformative level. Whatever symbolic beliefs and so forth we have, if it doesn't drive you toward some kind of skill of personal transformation, you got to think about, are you just in love with symbols, or are you in love with something that transforms you? So how do you actually transform yourself? What is the technology of transformation? And if it's something like, do I believe in the Messiah? I think to myself, well, let's say yes, then what do I do about it? Now, if I just believe in the Messiah at the end of times, all right, so I'll wait. That's not a good belief for me. I'd rather have the belief that we live in a world of hidden messiahs. So what I'd like all of you to do, going back to our theme tonight, think of all these people who have been devastated, that there's some spark of the Messiah in each of them, And when we are present to them, caring for them, helping them in any way possible, it's as if sparks are released and a little bit of messianic energy goes in the air, and there's some kind of fulfillment and healing that takes place. So my last word that I began a few weeks about existentialism and existentialist reading of the Bible, it's disengage from I don't believe that to, well, I'll suspend disbelief. I'll believe it to the point that it propels me either toward personal transformation or some deed of of acting on some deep moral axiom. All right, that's my teaching for tonight. You know, my phone is going off like crazy here. I want to make sure I haven't uh okay. We're all good. Sometimes Yosh is trying to contact me because I can't see the messages. He sends me messages here. All right, that's my teaching for tonight. We've agreed, Abigail. All right, let me just turn my phone off. And I see a thing on my screen. I have to hit OK to make it go away. Now, if I hit OK and the meeting ends, stay. I'll be right back. Okay. You're still here. Great. Yeah, that wasn't the button to destroy the world. That was just an alert on my screen. Okay, so I finished that unit. I'll come back to it because I really feel ignited by it. In my occasional teachings, that when I bump into Israelis, I'm bringing that down. People are saying to me, "Oh, you got to teach this." I said, "Okay, let me put it in the curriculum that I'm developing." Next week, Avigal and I are going to engage in conversation. She's working an incredible spiritual path called Pathwork, and I have lots of questions. And I said, "Can I just kind of interview you in front of everybody?" And she said, "Yalla, let's do it." So we're going to do that at least one or two times. If you're interested in Pathwork or nobody who is, or you just want to hear a path kind of parallel to wisdom works, but definitely different. And one thing that Abigail wants to do, if I may speak for you, Abigail, is start doing spiritual work for teens and young adults. And I want her to talk about that. Again, she's having informal conversations up in Herzliya where she's really bringing spiritual relief to many people. And we've said, Abigail, we have this nonprofit, we have this Center for Wisdom. Let's take a piece of it. And we're encouraging Abigail uh, to take the bright light that she has inside and share it with others.
It's a pleasure.
Okay, Ruth, you've been very patient. Go ahead.
All right, can you hear me? Is this
Yeah.
not? Okay. I wanted to share something that many years ago I lived in New York, and met Isaac Bashevis Singer, and I knew him and I spent time with him, and I was able to interview him twice, two different newspapers. And on one of the occasions, I'm sharing this with you because of what's happened in Los Angeles. One of the occasions I said to him, if you had to leave your house because of a fire and you could only take 3 things with you, what would the 3 things be?
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
he said, I would only take 2 things with me, my American passport and my parakeet.
Okay.
And I
Very cool.
found that over the years because
Yeah.
first of all, he arrived in America in 1935, just before he saw what happened, and he was so grateful to America. But the other thing was that the passport gave him life, and so
Right.
the only other living thing he had living with him, which was his parakeet.
Wow. Thank you. That's a good exercise. What would you take?
I
And
said,
Randy, is that Randy over there? Hold on a second. I can see if Mary, did I getting your name right?
Yes. Hi. Shabbat
Hi.
Shalom. Hi.
Shalom.
One thing that I heard that I wanted to run by you is it true that actually when there's sadness and darkness that the creator cannot rest with someone that has sadness and darkness?
That the creator cannot what again?
Rest. Like the creator doesn't want to, the
The
creator doesn't,
Shekhinah, yeah, does not, as it were, rest on that person.
right.
But it's true enough that when people say, I don't feel God's presence, my question is, are you a receptacle for God's presence? Because sometimes the way that we think and feel is as if we banish the divine presence. So the divine will is to be present, but the divine will can't break through. So when a person says to me, I don't feel God, I say, well, can God feel you? Right. So again, I don't want to say this theologically, like speak for God, but rather if, for example, if one were to say, I feel depressed, I don't feel God's presence, I say, well, would you like some skills to break through the darkness, to break through the depression? Because it could be that God is standing right outside the locked door and wants in. So I don't know if it's true theologically, but I'll say spiritually it's true. Spiritually it's true. And therefore, when one, as I was taught by my Chabad rabbi when I was young, when I'm going through depression, I have a spiritual obligation to break through it, to heal myself and to heal God, to break through the klipa. From his understanding, I have a klipa, a husk around my spark, and if I break the husk, I heal God. Very profound idea that the divine is counting on us to break husks. Does
But
that answer?
what brings about the husks and how can we break them?
Okay, so it's core to the Kabbalah, it's core to Lurianic Kabbalah, and if you go to Rabbi Finley channel on YouTube, you'll see I gave 10 lectures on
Oh,
how the Kabbalah came into being. I call it Preface to Lurian, to Preface to the Spiritual Psychology of the Kabbalah. I think I gave these talks in the summer of 2022. You'll see 10 consecutive talks. So that is actually it's my religion, meaning I'm in a subset of the Jewish religion called Kabbalistic, especially Lurianic Kabbalistic, especially Hasidic Lurianic Kabbalah. That's my religion. And so everything I do, everything I teach is somewhat based in that. So I would very much encourage you to go listen to those talks and you'll understand you'll understand everything I teach is about that, even if I'm not teaching about it, and including the teaching that I just shared with you.
okay, thank you. I'll definitely check it out.
Okay, great. All right, getting ready to to sign off. Hey, Shana, my dear friend, rabbi, student, just want to acknowledge you, and so glad to see you here.
So glad to see
Oh,
you, Rabbi. Thank you. It's
yeah,
wonderful.
do you have a thought? I mean, you're such a deep, wonderful person. I can't imagine you don't have a thought going through your head.
Thank you. I mean, I'm being a receptacle for your wisdom tonight. Just to thank you for holding this space. I commute between Los Angeles and my pulpit in San Francisco, and these cities are so dear to me, and they're so vulnerable, and that's how we're all feeling, so remarkably vulnerable, and have been for so long, and it's just fortifying to see you and to know that you're well and your beautiful family. And we pray for you and think of you all the time. And I share so many teachings in your name. You can ask my congregants, they know you well. And it just means the world. And I'm so grateful for the technology that lets us hear you and be together in this
Right?
way. Thank you.
Right? Yeah, it's
Great to
incredible. All right, so I'm going to wrap up the teaching for tonight, which means that the recording goes off.
I have one last thing to say, if
Oh,
I may.
please, Abigail, yes.
I wrote it to Helena because I was just curious, but I'll ask everybody about a book that is pretty popular in our family called Deep Survival by Lawrence Gonzalez.
Mhm.
And it feels relevant to what's happening right now, and I apply it to everything in my life, including things that I have with pathwork and the war and the fires going on in LA. And that is the fact that when people are in extreme situations, in life or death survival situations, those who oftentimes survive are surrendering to the awe and reverence of nature. They're the ones who aren't sitting and getting wrapped up in their own psyche and the fear of what's happening in the human physical realm, but rather surrendering to the fact that they're a part of this much, much larger thing that they are not in control of. And it also ties back to what
Yeah.
Helena was talking about, of people want to be in control, and what Steve was talking about, getting all of these alerts. Well, that is the way that people can exert their control. And in Deep Survival, this idea of letting go of control and connecting to nature, connecting to God, is actually the best way to survive.
Uh, Maybe we can talk about deep survival. If I could just share something from the book. He interviewed people who got lost in the forest, and they would panic. As they're looking for the way out, they would see their footprints. And people would say, "Who put my footprints here? That's not the way out of the forest." And then the person would just say, "Okay, I'm in the forest. I'm lost in the forest." I mean, assuming you have a moment to breathe. You sit down and breathe, and you just absorb the forest.
Well, even
Absorb.
without a moment to breathe, examples that he gave of people in the ocean, of a shipwreck or a boat breaking down, that even when they fall and they go into the water, most of the time when people die of being underwater, not being able to breathe, is not because they weren't able to get to the top, but because they thrash and they're
They
anxious.
panic.
They panic that they lose the ability to focus for a moment and find where the top is.
Hmm.
And instead, what they do because of the panic is they'll go around in circles and swallow water.
Hmm. There are, you're right. I read the book and it became, I forgot about it. God, we all read the book and I bought so many copies and it was a part of our family discussion for a long time. Thank you, remind me of that.
It still is.
Well,
It's a part of my discussion all the time, my day-to-day life. I bring
it's
it
a
up
great
constantly.
teaching. Well, my copy is in a box up in the up in the Herzliya house, but I'm sure it's on Kindle. Maybe you and I will talk about deep survival next time. We have so many things to talk about that we've been, learning in our family for years, and that would be a
I would
great.
love to. I would love to. And one of those things, Steve, by the way, one of the things in that book is to be prepared and do your checklist. One of the
Yeah.
biggest mistakes people make is they think, okay, whatever, I don't need to do that one today.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
not the right thing.
Yeah.
Always have your checklist, always have your plan, and go according to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. He discovered an irony. Why is it that the best pilots were crashing their planes in World War II? Because the best pilots thought, yeah, I got this. And as soon as they forced pilots to have a checklist, accidents went down. So one thing is have a checklist, for everything important. Yeah, there's all kinds of things that
We
oh, what
had
a
that
great.
in the ambulance as well. In the ambulance, every week we had
Abigail
the
was a combat medic in the Israeli army, so
the daily checklist and the weekly checklist that we have to go through. It's like, I just went through this shelf. I know exactly what's on this shelf, but that's the law. That's the rule of the ambulance. You absolutely must do your checklist every day, every week, no matter what, and it saves lives.
yeah, yeah. Well, you have a lot to share about that too. You treated a lot of people. I'm sure you guys went through your checklist.
Mm.
Uh,
Mel.
okay. Is that Mel? Is that Mel? Oh, hey. Okay, hey, Mel. Okay, so you get the last word tonight. Thank you, Abigail.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the checklist thing. 1,500 hours of flying fighters. There were very few checklists that we had to memorize. Such as you're out of control, what do you do? Things that we just automatically reacted to. And the rest of them, we went to our checklist. And I used to have at least one or two emergencies a week. And we didn't think anything about it because we had our checklist. And we managed to get down just fine and then, walked away, didn't even think about it. And I just want to add also that we're maybe 5 or 10 miles away from the Eaton fire. But we looked at these mountains about a half a mile. We're in Glendora, about half a mile away. And I thought, wow, these winds are coming from those mountains. If those mountains go up, we got 5, maybe 10 minutes. And that got us to building our own little checklist. So, packing some bags, we were not under an alert, but we were ready to go just in case because we knew we would have very, very little time.
Yeah. Great. Well, we're great. We got a great discussion teed up for next week. We're not Los Seguros there, but tentatively Larry Gonzalez Deep Survival as a
Lawrence.
topic. Lawrence as our tentative topic for next week, and maybe for a while.